Okay, now let's move into the meat of these circumstances so you can understand what the heck's going on here. We're going to work with the world condition. We're going to look at the human condition and some solutions and safeties. And I'm going to present my condition so that you can kind of follow after the way that I've understood myself and actually how I have wrecked myself in tragic ways. Now, the world condition. Here we go. Let's start. I've made some amazing discoveries. I am a car guy. Okay. When I was a kid, I had a peculiar, you might call it a scent one. And that was my Uncle Richard. My Uncle Richard was a dentist. He was like a detail, a crafts person. And he had two antique cars. He had a 1931 Model A and a 1934 Plymouth PE Business Coupe, which is a relatively rare car, a very fine car. And that man, Uncle Richard, had three daughters. And I was one of the cousins to those daughters. And when we would gather together at my Uncle Richard's house for Easter and for Thanksgiving and Christmas time, he would put the little children in the beautiful Model A Ford that he called Lizzie. And we would just drive around the town and roll the windows down and wave at people and honk, and we would just make our own little parade. And because of this, I had some interest in funny old cars. And I was given a couple of plastic car models, and I began a little bit of a personal life of really enjoying cutting apart all the little plastic pieces and building little cars. And from this building of cars, I learned about a lot of car parts. I learned, here's the exhaust pipe, and you glue that in. You've got these other parts and wheels and windshield and convertible top. And so I spent a lot of time literally almost being a tiny, tiny car factory. And I would love reading the instructions and doing a really good job of taking apart the pieces and then painting them. And I even had friends later on who would bring their car models to me because I became really good at painting white letters on the tires and detailing the dashboard so that the car looked more like a real car and not just like little molded pieces of plastic. So I would do some of the detail painting, and I enjoyed these things very much. I enjoyed just learning all by myself. I have a brand new box model, and I would take the instructions out. I'd look all the parts, take all these little pieces. It was like a treasure for me to learn about all these little things and how they went together with little dabs of glue. And so I became a car guy, and I ended up being a kind of a self-taught antique car mechanic. So in recent times, I've had a very close friend in Nevada County, California, way up in the Gold Rush country near Lake Tahoe and Donner Pass. And I spent some time in Northern California. In recent seasons, there have been these crazy, crazy fires. There have been these horrible fires in Northern California. And I discovered something very peculiar. In the midst of these fires, there were peculiar things that the fire marshals and people that have been dealing with fires in California for ages were saying, there is something absolutely weird about all these fires and all this devastation. Now, I have a statement to make since I'm a car guy. I mean, I grew up, after I started learning how to work on cars, I discovered antique car parts yards where you can go into a yard and see all these beautiful old cars, most of them rusty and falling apart, but you can find a part for your car that's in nice condition and replace it, whether it's a glove box door or a radio or a piece of trim or a more essential thing like, a portion of the motor or, structural things because your car got in a car accident. I spent a lot of time in antique car parts yards. But here's one statement. Aluminum wheels. Most modern cars have wheels made of aluminum. Most modern cars have engine blocks made of aluminum. Aluminum wheels and aluminum engine blocks do not ever melt down into flowing liquid in a forest fire. See, I've seen cars that have been just, like in buildings that have burnt down. I've seen cars that have been in forest fires. And when a car is in a forest fire, or even in a garage that burns down, sometimes the tires catch fire, but actually rarely they do. They rarely do. Rubber, it's really difficult to get rubber to begin to burn. It takes a lot of applied constant heat for rubber to begin to be burning. But if you park a car in the midst of a raging forest fire, the windows of the car do not melt down. They stay in place. The finish of the car gets kind of bubbly and weird and ugly looking. And everything else pretty much stays intact. There might be some melting of plastic. But a lot of times, big raging forest fire comes around a car and things are not going to melt down. So, in these fires in California, and in the fires in Greece and Gatlinburg, Canada, China, Australia, and many places in the United States, you see aluminum wheels that have actually melted down into flowing puddles of aluminum on the floor, on the ground, on the asphalt. And the actual engine blocks that are inside of the enclosed engine compartment, engine blocks, literally melted down on the asphalt. During these California fires, I was introduced to a pleasant and kind and reasonable woman. This woman has a website. And she was basically a real estate person. And she started discovering that in her county, Sonoma County, and other counties around California, there was this invasion of these teams of people that were financed by someone. And these teams of people were basically changing the zoning laws for purchasing and building structures and properties. And this ordinary lady, just a simple, hard-working family person, started discovering these controls being put on all of the counties. And literally, people being prevented from doing the most simple things that are beneficial for zoning, development, etc., etc. And she began to discover, just on her own, that there are things going on in the world. There are controls being put on. There is clearing of land and property in peculiar ways. And there is restructuring of all of these atmospheres. She began to discover startling things. So first of all, in this world condition, I began to discover things about the world that were shocking and that were actually affecting territories of America that I'm familiar with. Now, why did WTC 7 fall down? That's an important question. Why did World Trade Center number 7 just fall down? It was not hit by a plane. Why did the buildings that were designed to withstand a hit from a 747, which was the largest plane at the time, why did those buildings fall down at free fall speed like a paper clip falling down? Like that. Why did they just fall down? And WTC 7 was not hit. Why did it just fall down? There seems to be clear evidence that there were like 8 snipers around Dealey Plaza when the president was assassinated. But the official information speaks of only 1. There are many peculiar things going on in the world at this point, and we ought to be curious, concerned, and unified in our understanding, family-wise. That's number 1, world condition. Next is human condition, coming right up.